G'day, community, and welcome to the Jock Reynolds Supercoach podcast. I'm Lekdog. I'm joined, as always, by my beautiful counterpart, the bearded magician, the man from Orange. It's Patch. How are you?
Lekdog, I'm all right. How are you? The sun in my stars, the stars in my night sky. You wonderful human being that you are. How are you?
Look, like everyone, we're going through some stuff, but for the most part, I'm good. Footy's on. Supercoach is happening. I'm alive and well, and that's enough for me, Patch. I hope everyone out there who's listening is alive and well, and if you're not, and you need anything, I don't know, give us a shout out. We love you. We'll support you.
If you're not alive and well, you might want to get that checked.
Yes, you might want to get that checked. I've got a couple of shout outs off the top of the pod, Patch. First of all is Telebeats. Shout out to Telebeats for the funky music, the funky intro. Look up Telebeats on Instagram. And speaking of Instagram, I want to shout out valuable Supercoach community member Zano.art on Instagram. Look him up. He primarily does a lot of Sydney-based artwork, but you can go through. There's some Eddie Betts stuff. There's some Paddy Dangerfield stuff. There is some great work. And if you want to follow him on Twitter, Zane Red and White. The reason I shout him out is because he's done an awesome Eddie Betts piece a couple of weeks ago now, and it got shouted out by the Carlton Cheer Squad. It got shouted out by Eddie Betts' family. Everyone's loving it. So just get around him. He's a good bloke and a great part of the community, Patch. I was going to say it's time to panic, but I'm feeling quietly comfortable with the 33 games of football in 20 days that we're about to endure.
I mean, on one hand, oh my God, am I excited. Football every night of the week. Sign me up. On the other hand, what?
Well,
excuse me?
I think with proper planning, with some awareness, with some calm, cool heads, we will prevail. And I'm saying that coming from a point of weakness, and you're sitting in a point of strength in terms of how we're doing this year, Patch. And I think together we can work through this, we can guide the community to some success and to some peaceful Supercoach selections.
That is a bold call out from the mess that we're about to undertake. Like, we're recording now on Monday night. The last game of the round hasn't happened yet. And that'll be the way forward for the next few weeks. All of the team announcements will be insane. There are buys coming up. We'll talk about buys and all of that stuff in a minute, but how can he be so calm, man? Like, what? This is about to hit us like a ton of bricks.
I think it's just a bit of perspective. The world's falling apart. There's hurricanes tearing down the wall. There's people getting sick. All the bad stuff that's happening in the world. I look at Supercoach and I've been given extra trades. Like, baby, life is sweet. Let's talk about it.
That is true. That's true. It's all about perspective. Let's talk about... So what from the top, for anyone that has missed it, let's go through what the changes are to Supercoach over the next few rounds, because it's going to get a bit hairy.
Yeah, so
no matter how you look at it.
From a Supercoach point of view, the changes are pretty simple. So we've got 33 games, 20 days. We know all that. The overall Supercoach trade limit has currently been increased from 30 trades to 34 trades. It's 4 extra trades with an extra trade, 3 per round, available to coaches to use in round 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we're getting 4 extra trades, and we can use 1 extra trade each week, if we choose to, through until the end of round 12. During that time, there will be buys. We'll talk about that shortly. But this week, this round, Patch, things are as normal in terms of Supercoach. You've just got an extra trade this week.
Yep, so there's no best 18. Best 18 kicks in the buy rounds, and we'll run through them in a second, as we've said. But next week, 3 trades, and it's just all kind of normal, which is exciting. That's a lot of potential, which we'll discuss.
It is exciting, Patch. The next thing to look at is for rounds 10 and 11, where there will be buys. Round 10, we'll see Fremantle, West Coast, Carlton, and Hawthorn not play. And round 11, we'll see Sydney and GWS not play. During those rounds, you will have 3 trades, and the scoring system will move to best 18 as we saw it do so in round 3. So your best 18 scores will count for that round, Patch. So don't fret if you've got a couple of West Coast, a couple of Carlton, a couple of Hawthorn. You just need to get 18 best scorers on field for that first round. And again, in round 11, best 18 scorers, Patch. It's not too scary so far. Are you worried? Are you concerned?
I mean, there's always worry and concern because that's who I am as a human being. But, I mean, you've spelled it out. The next 4 weeks, the main issue that will be very interesting and very hard to wrap our heads around is the fact that the AFL's decision to allow clubs to name their teams 24 hours before a game means that we'll be locking in trades before knowing who's been named for what round. So say goodbye to the Thursday night panic and say hello to the eternal struggle of, oh, can I pick that rookie? Will they be playing? I won't know until after the person I want to trade out for them has been locked out. That's the thing that is going to be really hard to grapple with, and hopefully a lot of rookies will get a lot of run in the legs simply because of the frantic format of the next couple of weeks, the next 4 rounds. You know, people will be rested, and if you've got those fresh legs on the bench, you'll be able to field 18 in all of those rounds. But yeah, the preparing and you're going to have to strategize and think ahead about when you can make your trades and how long you can delay making trades into the round, because rolling lockout will still continue. So you try and wait for as long as possible before a game, say a Tuesday night game, and then pull the trigger just before that, and then hope that the player you're trading in is going to play, because it'd be mighty unfortunate to go the other way and trade in a premium, trade in a Jake Lloyd, for example, and then Jake Lloyd won't get a rest because he's got a bye, but you trade in someone like a Christian Petrarca and suddenly he's rested for a week. Well, what do? Well, it's not ideal.
It's not ideal, and it's going to be difficult to manage. It's essentially, you've got to leave your trades as late as you can. Planning ahead is going to be crucial. You've got to look at guys who you think are going to play, guys who, don't miss games. Your Lockie Neals, everyone I say now is going to miss games, but your Jack McRae's, etc. Guys with some sort of question marks, with history of missing games. Dane Zorko, I was going to say Isaac Heaney, obviously he's not playing. Those sort of guys would be a concern. You think they're going to rest? The older players as well are going to be a concern. I imagine older players more likely to be rested than younger players. Having said that, not many people are going to have these really old players. It's good news for rookies, I imagine. I think we're going to see more rookies playing. Even if they're only playing 1 or 2 games, they're getting some points on field, helping you bolster those best 18 rounds. But I think, Patch, with all this information comes some new tactics. Previously, before we knew that this was going to be the situation, and remember, it's just, I've just knocked over, just having a heart attack here, I'm swinging my arms around. We don't know yet if I'm assuming that the AFL is going to say every other team that hasn't had a bye is going to have a bye at some stage. Stuff's still changing, stuff's still flexible, Supercoach is still flexible, but at the moment we're just working with the information we have. I think it means we've got to steer straight away from the value picks. We've been saying this a couple of weeks now. Guns and rookies has to be the tactic now. If we're going to best 18, you need to have the best players you can get playing. And, you'd rather have the Dr. Supercoach guys, actually, I think it was the Dr. Supercoach guys, did a really good article on the Herald Sun about it today. They're basically saying you don't want to have 4 guys scoring 90 and have 2 of those 90s fall out of your best 18. You want to have 2 guys scoring 150 and 2 rookies scoring, 30 or 40 and having those scores fall out. So it's guns and rookies time. If you weren't going guns and rookies like me, it's time to try again. It's time to load up and find these Uber Primos. Patch, what are your thoughts on guns and rookies going into this next period?
I'm not as, obviously those 2 weeks and, there will be the buys that come on. later on where you will need to have those best 18, but I don't think you can afford to. You still have to be smart about it. You can't sort of throw away on a DPP non-playing player for a downgrade to just try and get as much coin to get up to, say a Josh Kelly. I think we still need to be smart about keeping those warm bodies there and then finding the value when it's there. Obviously, we now have to be a bit pickier about it, but you look at, if you didn't get Bailey Smith last week, I think he's still a very excellent option. Tom Doedee would have been a good option if he hadn't injured his hamstring, but now we've got to trade him out. I think there's still the value there for some picks, and when that value is there, you do need to look at picking it up. But by and large, yeah, if you do have to try and maximise those points within the 18 where possible. But I think if you start to lose sight of the fact that you still need a playing 22 and a fit 22 throughout the other 2 weeks of this hectic schedule, you might fall away a little bit.
100%. We need to be targeting rookies that are going to be playing. Clubs are being pretty good about it at the moment, naming rookies ahead of their debut. That's going to be helpful. And obviously, if a guy presents serious value, if you get a Bailey Smith sitting there, you've got to look at him. If you get one of these guys who's really falling, Jai Simpkin in a few weeks, Mitch Duncan in a couple of weeks, these sort of guys, you're not going to ignore them to go other guys. In terms of teams that have buys, Patch coming up that we know of that are locked in, Carlton, Hawthorn, Fremantle, West Coast Eagles, Sydney, GWS. As a result, I'm not targeting a single player from any of those teams, outside of maybe a playing rookie, until they have had their bye. That will hurt me when I look at guys like Haynes, Kelly, Mills, Nat Fyfe if he drops, those sort of guys. Yeah. But
Good luck finding a defensive upgrade, because you've just listed I've got maybe 6 targets in the back line, and all of them play for those 6 clubs.
Well, that's the downside. But I think the way to go is to wait, even like a Shannon Hearn, I think, and by the way, great shout out by me on last week's pod. I'll credit myself there. You weren't interested in the Patchula, but came out and turned up, did good things. You wait. Unfortunately, actually, it presents an interesting opportunity as well, Patch. I wasn't going to ask you about this yet, but Carlton, Cripps, Doherty, they're both underperforming. Both have basically done stuff all for 4 weeks. They've got a bye coming up. Is now the time to bin them?
Well, I mean, if you bin them, you do lock in that loss in some respects, but it could also present an opportunity. You keep them for another week and then maybe ditch them next week to sideways to another premium. We've got the extra trades. We've got that luxury. I think it'll be a team-by-team proposition, but I'm not going to say no. But on the other hand, if you don't have a Patrick Cripps and, depending on how he goes this week, if he gets paid 6 holding the man free kicks around the stoppages, then I'm going to start looking out for him. Maybe we jump on at a cheaper price. But yeah, there is a chance to then offload some of these players that aren't doing quite as well. And then, maybe a Chad Wingard, if anyone's picked up Chad Wingard, potentially you could flick him there. There is a scope to do that, I think.
Doherty and Cripps, I think, will both fall below 500k this week. So they've just been getting... Well, Cripps injured on the weekend, got kicked in the sternum. Toby Green rules don't apply to anyone but Toby Green, which is disappointing. Sam Doherty's been getting tagged. It's good for the Blues. It's bad for Supercoach. So maybe that's why I'm spirited, because the Blues are 4-4, and in the time of us recording the podcast, that has not happened.
No, it has not. And that goes back to Jock and Higo recording the podcast as well, back potentially a decade more.
So we talked about the teams that I probably want to avoid until they've had their bye, even if it presents really good value. But I think a fun little game will be going through the teams that don't have buys listed in the next couple of weeks, just having a look at some players that we might be interested in, Patch. And we're going to do this off the top of our head. I've got a couple of notes jotted down, but we'll bounce back and forth. I want to start with Essendon.
Before we do, we'll note that obviously Melbourne and Essendon will not have a bye coming up. But yeah, if you're looking to trade in players and say you've got Todd Goldstein, Jar Simpkin, and you followed our suggestion and brought in Sean Higgins after listening to 15 seconds of last week's podcast, you might not want to top up on any more roos. You might want to just sort of cool the jets a bit there. So obviously, all this advice will be team dependent. If you've got too many Bulldogs or too many Cats or whatever, try and diversify your investments, as the Supercoach investor Dan Bagala would say.
That's very good, and you're right. Essendon Melbourne would be my beacon of light. Although we are going into best 18, you're locking in any players you bring in for them, barring injury. Pretty much, you're locking in to play all 4 games over the next 4 weeks from Essendon and Melbourne. So
this is also a landmark in that it's the first time you've ever said something positive about the Essendon Football Club.
Well, I mean, purely structurally and scheduling wise, they've actually given me a windfall by ruining a game in round 3. So while they did ruin the AFL, they've somehow made Supercoach better this year. So Essendon, a couple of names are jumping off the page at me, and they've had ups and down seasons, but Shield, Merritt, Sard. I've left Ridley off intentionally. I think while he's still very good, he's now super expensive for what he was, and I think if you haven't got him, you've probably missed the boat, even though he looked awesome yesterday. Patch, is there anyone from Essendon interesting you?
No, I think you've pretty much nabbed it there. Sam Draper, if he's named, we spoke about him last week. If he's named, I'm tempted to trade him straight in and forget about waiting a week for him to jump on the bubble. But I think beyond that, there's not a huge amount more off the top of my head. But Sard is one I do quite like.
Devon Smith. Are we still holding him? He's had his shittest score of the season. He's had 4 or 5 weeks of garbage. Is he someone we still are holding? Last week we said we're going to hold.
I mean, I can sit here without having him and pretty comfortably say you should probably consider holding him. You should hold him if you can, because he will sort of cover that donut in the next couple of weeks when players are rested. But you might simply just be unable to stomach the fact, that you have to then sit down, look at your team on Tuesday morning or whenever it is, and see Devon Smith's smug little name sitting there alongside what did he score this week? 30, 40? Stuff.
Scrolling down, 49 points.
If you can't bear the sight of that 49 next to his name, feel free to flick him. Just go nuts. But the fact that he's Essendon's 7th best scorer for the year tells you a bit about the Supercoach relevance of the Essendon Bombers. Andy McGrath at under 500k, maybe.
No, I think that's a really good selection. Another 10 tackles on the weekend.
We've spoken about going for that sort of uber premium where you can, but I think McGrath's potentially in the Bailey Smith category of bargain enough. He's enough of a bargain that you can probably go there.
Let's move on. Let's look at Melbourne players. We know that they're going to, in theory, play every game. There's some obvious names here. Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver. No issue with trading any of those if you don't have them.
I'd almost argue that they're essential at this stage, and after the game that they had on Sunday night, oh boy, you'd be hard-pressed to argue that you don't want any of them in your team. Sitting there watching that game, having Oliver, Gawn, Petrarca, Viney, who scored 118, and then Lachie Neale in my side was kind of nice. Makes Melbourne games very watchable.
Yeah, I don't know Oliver's projections. He's probably going to get to 600k. I'm considering, and it's blasphemous to say this, Cripps to Oliver. I'm likely... Actually, I just wanted to address this as well. Likely tactic for me throughout this buy period is going to be 2 down, 1 up, where applicable. 2 rookies down to other rookies, 1 up to a primo. Clayton Oliver is absolutely dead centre, top of my list for a selection. Yeah. Jack Viney, Patch.
Under 500k. We've seen there are weeks where he just goes gangbusters, gets a lot of tackles, gets rewarded for going to the ball first. The round 1 where he scored 180 was huge, showed his ceiling. Only had the 2 tons since then. And sort of he's had an 86, 91, 60, 123, and then 120.
He'll be about 520k, I reckon, this week after price changes.
I'm very happy having him in my side. Would I trade him in? I'd probably try and get to an Oliver. We'll try and get to Petrarca, who's, probably going to be, it's hard to do the projection in my head because I'm bad at maths, but he'd be, 565, maybe 570k. If you can find an extra 80k and swing someone forward, I'd be looking to do that instead of Viney.
And then the other guy, I don't think he's a big trade-in target, but we were talking about him on Twitter today. Stephen May has pumped out his fourth score in a row where he hasn't dropped below 90. So his last three, 118, 91, 90, and then another 103. He's a pod. He's going to be... what's his price going to be? I'm just trying to work out the maths. About 450k. He's taken a hell of a lot of playing on from kick-ins. He's an option. I'm not saying he's a fantastic option. I'm not saying he's a super great option. But at 450k, 4 weeks, no score under 90, he's on my radar.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Patch, Brisbane, should be an easy one. Who are the key targets from this Brisbane side that we're seeing?
Well, Lachie Neale, if you don't have him, you would be very painfully aware of that fact. Jared Lyons has popped up the last couple of weeks, looked very, very good. 114 last week and then scored 147 on Sunday night. In 1% of teams, is in 1,700 teams. I believe the Dr. Supercoach guys gave him a shout out on the Herald Sun site as well. And he's only had the 2 scores below 114 this year. Very good selection if you can afford the cash. Dane Zorko, we mentioned last week, is very cheap, very good. Jared Berry.
Concerns over his health, though.
Yes, concerns over Zorko's health. You quite like Jared Berry.
Yes, he is a player I like, but I think you're getting confused with Zach Bailey, who I think is the greatest player of all time after Daniel Rich. But he did pump out another 110 on the weekend.
He did. A potential pod if you're looking for one. And I'm not going to talk about Hugh McCluggage. If you want to, then I'll give you 30 seconds when I take my headphones off and scream into a pillow.
You wouldn't have traded Hugh McCluggage, would you, Patch?
No, I certainly wouldn't have looked at trading Jai Simpkin and then decided to trade Hugh McCluggage based off a few bad scores in a row. That wouldn't be a thing I'd do.
Not at all. Look, Neil, obviously a target. Jared Lyons, a great target. He's going to be about 570k. Zorko, question marks. Hugh McCluggage, good, but up and down. So he'd probably be my third in line as a selection, I'd say. Gold Coast Suns, surprisingly, have more options than you'd think going off previous seasons. But let's start with the big one, Hugh Greenwood Patch.
Just trade him in, trade Matt Rowell in. Don't care if he's missing, we'll bring you home.
Shout out to Noah Anderson for being the best selection from Gold Coast in terms of rookies this year. Hugh Greenwood Patch, he just keeps doing Hugh Greenwood stuff. Narrow loss to Western Bulldogs. How's it going? Should everyone have him?
If you can get him, certainly. 97 on the weekend and, coming off a 144 the week before that. He's in blistering form. He's getting a bit more to the expensive side now. Will be 570, 580k thereabouts, which is a lot of money to fork out for him, but his tackle numbers are excellent, which is a very good base. It means he's not going to have those putrid scores, you'd hope. But there's a midfielder there that I'm slightly more interested in simply because he's in 1,600 teams.
Took Miller.
I mentioned him offhand a few weeks ago, and since then he's gone 111, 81, 142, 102, and then 140 on Thursday night. And I just love the way he plays football. He's just good. He might be a bit up and down. He's had the 81 and the 98 in there with the 4 tons for the year. 5 tons for the year, rather. Now 6. Look at me doing maths, Lekdog. Look at me go.
Maths love on the pod.
I really want to pick him. I don't know if I've got the guts
to
do
news.
it. But
we have live breaking news on the podcast. Brennan Cox late out. Tobe Watson will be playing for the Fremantle Football Club tonight.
Tobe?
It's just going to be
Lord.
Job Watson. He's run out of the commentary box with a Groucho Marx mustache and nose on. This is huge.
My name is Tobe Watson. It's the stupidest
Amazing.
name I've ever heard.
Sorry to interrupt you. Took Miller, absolute jet. He's a primo this year. They don't have a buy locked in yet. Get him while the going is hot. He'll be about 570k. A lot of these players around that range are going to be. And then outside of that, not a lot of players that I would want to take a huge gamble on.
I love that you said they've got more options than usual this year, and then you've listed 2 options.
Yeah, but the guys that I want to...
You're not incorrect.
Well, I mean, Jared Witts, he's going to score you 100, but everyone's got Ruckman. Sam Collins is playing really well, but do you want a fullback in your side from the Gold Coast Suns? Harbrow's 800 years old. There are some guys I like, but they're still not guys I would take a huge gamble on. Jack Lukosius has forward defensive eligibility, but looking, you're right, it's still pretty much just Took Miller and Greenwood.
Yep, that's all I'm really considering. I liked Lockie Weller early in the season, but glad it didn't go there, wouldn't go there now.
No. No, I'd rather Sam Collins. Adelaide Football Club is garbage, but they almost beat your boys.
Oh, yeah, but we're also garbage.
They've
garbage.
And I'm only saying that they're garbage because I've never been able to say that about another football club. So, Brodie Smith has bounced back, Patch. He's pumped out a 129 after, what did he score, like 10 the other day?
13 was what he scored.
Is he someone in defence that you're going to be considering? So coming into the round, he had a break-even of 120, so his price is going to be about 435k. He's obviously very up and down. He's only had 2 other tons this year in a 94, and then some really, really poor scores. Are we finally seeing them utilise him the way they should?
Maybe. He still scored 13 last week.
That's a good point.
I'm not a huge fan of someone that scored 13 in a full game of football where they weren't injured. It's the Jack Darling effect from last year.
Yeah, there's no one I'm going to confidently recommend from here. You know, Matt Crouch is on report. Brad Crouch is injured. Duday's injured. He would have been our number 1 target, I reckon, Patch. And, I don't know,
Yep.
Rory Laird? Is he someone you'd look at?
Oh, maybe, potentially. No, I'm not excited by Adelaide this year. Just, I'm not getting in there. Not overly keen. The rookies, excellent. You know, McPherson on the weekend scored us 90-odd. Hamill, after scoring, 13 the week before, 10 the week before, bounced back with a 70-odd. The rookies are there. The rest of the team...
Not so much. Fantasy Freako put out a tweet about McPherson saying something like 70 of his 90 points came after Duday went off injured. So it's an interesting one to watch. He might be a little too out of reach price-wise after this round. But yeah, watch for rookies. They've got a few coming through that are pretty close, apparently. We'll go across the road to Port Adelaide, Patch, to look at the targets. These are all targets we're looking at to take advantage of the next few weeks prior to any other buys being announced to maximise points for us and to maximise your ranks community in Port Adelaide. Well, maybe they're not that good. Or is that too harsh?
Who knows this year? What is going on?
They're pretty good.
They're all right. They go all right. If they can sink your mub after the siren, then they've got to be a pretty strong side, I guess. If they're beating you up.
True. There is.
Sorry, just saying that was just unpleasant, despite how true it was.
Mitch Georgiadis owners would be happy. He scored 86 points on the weekend. Once again, not a guy I'm probably trying to target as a trade-in option, but scoring 86 for those who held him, well done. Travis Boak.
Laddams has gone down with an injury as well, out for 6 weeks, which means Georgiades should play for most of the next 6 games, unless they decide not to.
Yeah. I'd expect him to be staying in that side based on his performance and basing that on the fact that they need to fill that hole. The void of significance. Thank you, Patch. Travis Boak would have been 2 weeks ago at the top of this list for me, but he's not. He's not even close to the top of the list.
No, he's had a 98 and then a 53 on the weekend, 54.
Yeah, and 70 and a 70 the week before. His break even this week was 172, and he's missed it by 120 points basically. So his price is plummeting.
So close. It is in free fall, which is good for those of us that don't have him, but anyone that jumped on a couple of weeks ago will be livid, and rightfully so. I would want to see the form turn around before I buy in, but we've got a few weeks for his price to drop even more. When it turns around, you'd look at it. You'd almost rather Zach Butters at this stage ahead of him.
Wow. Zach Butters is playing out of his mind. Played really well against the Blues. But the man I'd rather is your man, Brad Ebert. He came back from suspension, scored 91 Supercoach points. He's not an uber primo that we've been talking about, but his price is going to fall to, I want to say about 460, 450k this week. He's going to be really valuable as a forward line option and probably top of my list from this side.
Yeah, look, potentially. And I think if you are strapped for cash and you're still desperate to get in a really good sort of top line forward, I think you could do a lot worse than Ebert because he'll finish in that top 10. You'd hope. And at that price, there aren't too many others around that price point that will do the same thing.
What are people riding the Dan Houston roundabout roller coaster, whatever you want to call it? I don't know if you can ride a roundabout. People with Dan Houston, what do they do?
Tear their hair out. And if they've not got any hair to tear, then I don't know. I don't know. He's had a few weeks. They had 3 times in a row from memory. Where he was thrown back in the midfield, and now he scored a 67 this week, and then he's back to doing the putting out the rubbish that he did at the start of the year, which caused all of us to drop him like a lead balloon. I don't know. Don't trade him in if you've got him. I don't know what to tell you really. If you've got him,
heading into the best 18, I reckon you can hold him because he has the potential to be high in your best 18, and he also has the potential to miss your best 18 completely, which is great. Which is great. I've just seen Fremantle Dockers tweet a photo of someone they're saying is Tobe Watson. I'm pretty sure that's a ball kid.
It certainly doesn't look like Jobe Watson.
Interesting.
That's for sure.
One to watch.
Maybe it's just stand in until Jobe can get the purple jumper up and running.
He's just going to run really fast between the box and the field. Yeah. Collingwood Football Club got smashed, and it made me feel good. And it made me worry about the fact that they played Brodie Grundy at full forward for a quarter after he got destroyed during the game patch. What do? Should we worry? Should we panic?
Nah, you don't panic with Brodie Grundy. He's the best ruckman in the game. He's, with Collingwood having a big, one of the toughest draws in the next little while, you'd expect they'd lighten the load a little bit. I don't think you can be too worried. I don't think you can really be trading him out. Maybe if you're, top 100, top 500 and you're desperate to do a Bruin manoeuvre, maybe you give it a whirl. I don't know who you'd trade to because all of the ruckmen just look terrifying at the minute. You hold Grundy.
They do have some trade-in options. Treloar dropped his first bad score of the year with an 81, but guess what? He wasn't alone. Their top scorer, Taylor Adams, still a really good buy, scored 94, is one. So it probably goes Adams, Treloar, and then Sidebottom is still to come back in. They're probably my 3 targets, unless you want Crisp or Maynard.
Yeah, I quite like both those options. They'll still be reasonably affordable. They look quite good. Isaac Quaynor, going to best 18, we're trying not to bring in these cheaper guys, but he'll be about 300k. Looks like a good player. Was one of the few that sort of really tried over the weekend with 79. If you're looking for an Egmoose Smith type player, like one of those mid prices, and you've just got Stuffall and your team's a wreck, you could consider him, but I wouldn't be jumping at it. But that's about all I'd be looking at from that side there.
Kudos to Darcy Cameron owners. It's going to be a valuable asset if he can do that every week. Scored 92 points, kicked 2 goals, looked okay, went into the ruck in that last quarter. A couple more teams.
Silence for Mason Cox's career.
No. Can't wait till someone like the Bulldogs or someone picks him up and chucks him at full forward.
He'll still keep Josh Shackey out of that Bulldogs lineup.
Man, to think he was the number 2 pick. I wanted him to come to the Blues when it didn't work out for him up north, but I'm glad that didn't happen. But we're not here to bash Josh Shackey. We're here to talk about targets from the final 4 teams we're looking at. 5 teams, Patch. We'll might blaze through these a little quicker. Richmond, not a lot enticing me, but I guess Jaden Short and Dustin Martin would have to be in the discussion.
Yeah, they're both cheap enough that they're going to be good. They're going to have good output despite their price point. Kane Lambert's been very, very good the last few weeks, but will he keep it up? I'm not willing to punt on it. If you are, go for it. But with more midfield power to come back, you'd think he'd start moving forward a little bit more. Still at 97 on the weekend, probably overpaying for him now.
Yeah, Jaden Short, just wanted to quickly mention, he'll be about 470k. We've talked about a couple of players that price point, but he is the leading scorer for Richmond this year. So just slightly ahead of guys like Kane Lambert and Dustin Martin and stuff like that. Dustin Martin, there's not a lot super exciting me in terms of Richmond. Hopefully they give us some downgrade options moving through this next period, but who knows?
Jaden Short, good. Nice, but yeah, Jaden Short, Kane Lambert, Dustin Martin, I think that does it.
North Melbourne, obviously Sean Higgins. Scored 90 on the weekend, and I didn't feel like he was that impactful, so to come away with 90 Supercoach points is a good return for him. Toddy Goldstein got brought down to Pitnet's level, scored 69 Supercoach points. Meanwhile, guys like Anderson, Pollock, and Trent Dumont, who's quietly having a very, very good year, tonned up. Patch, anyone from this list of players that excites you?
Obviously, Higgins does. We've spoken about him. Simpkin will be very cheap. Keep an eye on him for the next few weeks. I traded Goldstein in for Pitnet and gained 10 points and lost 300k. Was stoked with that. But outside of that, Dumont, you'd be interested in. I'm kind of keen on as a cheap forward. I still don't think we might not get to full primo this year, so Dumont would be one you could consider.
I'm pretty sure he's mid-only, so I don't know if we would actually consider him.
Averaging 111 in his last 3 before his 120-odd on the weekend. But no, with Cunnington out, he's scoring well. Will he continue doing it? I don't know enough about North to take the punt. I don't know. There's not really anyone else I would be looking at there.
Kyron Hayden got concussed last week, scored 7, which put his break-even up to 78. He came out and scored a 107. His price might jump, I can't do maths very well, maybe 250k. He's a midfielder. Look, it's expensive for a rookie, but maybe someone to look at. We expect he's going to play. I mean, he got knocked out, still played this week, so someone to consider potentially as a in quotation marks, rookie downgrade. Moving on to the final 3 teams, Patch. We've got Geelong, who play in a very short amount of time for us recording the pod. Who's jumping out for you at Geelong? We've got a couple big names back into the side this week.
Yeah, Dangerfield's obviously towards the top of the list of players you'd want from Geelong, but the one that's picking my interest is Mitch Duncan. Obviously had that injury, that hamstring injury a few games ago. He's back tonight. He might have torn a hamstring again by the time we finish recording and editing this, but he's one I've got my eye on. Hard to say too much more about Geelong at this stage. Is there anyone else you're looking at? Tom Hawkins very quietly having a good year as well.
As he always does. Was in one of my iterations pre-season, but I just thought he couldn't do it again, and that looks vindicated after round 2. But yeah, no, he's playing very well this year. I'd probably be too scared to take the punt. Mitch Duncan coming back in is probably the one to watch. Break even 200, so let's see what he does. Tom Stewart also coming back in, who has a break even, which I don't have in front of me, but hopefully he can come out and kick some ass. Darcy Fort is out for an extended period of time. Don't know if that affects anyone out there listening, but if you didn't know, that was announced today, or day of recording. I think we'll have more Patch to talk about once they've played. We've seen how their rookies go. Who was the rookie that was named? What was his name?
Close. Brad Close.
Brad
Close.
Yep. Brad Close. We'll see how he goes. We'll see how Stewart goes. We'll see how Duncan goes, and we'll have more to talk about throughout the week before their next game. Western Bulldogs, Patch, their big guns are doing big gun things.
Oh boy, I have a feeling that most people would almost have too many Bulldogs to consider bringing more in. I'd say you'd want no more than kind of 3 from one team if you can avoid it. I wouldn't be trading anyone out if you've got 4, but you've got English, McRae, well, obviously not Dunkley. He's still just at the top of that list because that's where
he's
he
not
is.
That. I don't think he's that far away from playing either anymore.
Yeah, Caleb Daniel obviously is turning into one of the best picks in the back line. The Bont is cheap for what he can produce. Bailey Smith, we've spoken about a couple of weeks in a row. They've got players that just keep scoring. They're just a Supercoach relevant team.
They are, and they've got a rookie on the bubble if he can get over the sore shoulder. In Callum Porter. Cody Waitman didn't do much for us on the weekend, scored just the 14 points, but if he keeps getting games, maybe he's someone we can look at if you don't already have him. So there are some options coming through for the Western Bulldogs. And our final team to have a look at, Patch, that don't have a bye round coming up is St Kilda. Are there any players that you want to flick, any players you want to bring in? Because looking at Max King, it's got to be close to flicking time.
Yeah, it'll depend on how your team's set up and all of that. But I think Max King, he's in that position that Curtis Taylor was in last week. If you can get rid of him or you need a rookie to go, he'd probably be the one that goes.
And as soon as you trade him, he will turn up.
Oh, absolutely. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. You'd look at Jack Steele, but I'm not hugely interested in a lot of other players. Paddy Ryder, we laughed last week saying, he's one of the most traded in like Ruckman, and then he came out and scored 142. So it shows what we know about things.
It does show what we know. Kicked 2 goals, 29 hitouts. Rowan Marshall kicked 2 and had 11 as well.
That's all I'd really be looking at from the Saints. Just Steele is the only one really on my list.
Yeah, I think so as well. Steele, I'm just trying to look through if there's any rookies that played. There's no one exciting me. Obviously, no one's going Rowan Marshall. Hey, maybe Paddy Ryder, because he's forward eligible. Maybe he is a good selection. I don't know. Daniel Butler owners will still be happy with him producing reasonable scores. But yeah, Steele is the number one target, and I don't see him making his way into my side for no reason other than just don't see it happening.
Yep, agreed. I'm in the same boat. We've gone through a lot of stuff. It's a very long pod. The football is nearly starting. Have we got any final thoughts, final words? What are we doing? We still don't know what we're doing, but we'll still be round during the festival of footy?
Oh, 100%. We'll have close to, if not daily content going up, I suspect. Well, we pretty much do every day anyway. Podcasts will be coming out. We'll try and squeeze in more streams than we do otherwise. If you want to get in on them, go to Lekdog Games on Twitch. You can follow along, you can subscribe, you can follow, you can do whatever you want, you can join, we can do live Q&As, all that sort of good stuff. We'll try and increase the occurrence of those. Podcast, everything else will just come out when it makes logical sense for us.
Yeah, we will try and do it as close to the end of rounds as possible. And for those that don't have it, we should have probably run this off the top. Round 9 is Wednesday, July 29 to Sunday, August 2. Round 10, so this is when lockout will lift and begin rolling again. Round 10 will begin Monday, August 3 and finish Friday, August 7. Round 11 is Saturday the 8th to Wednesday the 12th, and then round 12 is Thursday the 13th to Monday the 17th. And then what lies beyond, who knows?
We don't know. We may never know. Well, we'll know one day, actually. Thank you, community, for listening. Patch, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
And to you, my good friend.
May everyone have a good round of Supercoach. May everyone's team win except for whoever Carlton's playing. Oh, Hawthorn. Yeah, God, I hope we crush Hawthorn.
Oh, God, yeah, please beat Hawthorn.
Go Blues.
Go Bombers.